Hello everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Royal Blue podcast, and as you can see we're all here together in Echo Towers at just off Hull Street in St Paul's Square. I'm joined by our Echo's Everton correspondent Joe Thomas and our regular guest Gavin Buckland. Joe, you obviously just a couple of hours off away since Everton actually submitted their appeal to the Premier League, so that seems a natural point to start.
Yeah, obviously I think we all knew it was coming.
Yeah,
Everton made their signalled their intention the moment that the deduction became clear a fortnight ago. They, as well as their displeasure at the severity and the nature of the deduction, they also said that they plan to appeal it, and such is the way that everyone tends to operate I think lawyers tend to push it to the deadline. Whether for whatever reason I don't know, but today was the deadline, so we knew it was going today. And around 12:30, the club at the very least publicly announced it had been formally submitted. So at some point during the morning or lunchtime, that's the case. So we start a whole new process now, where the Murray Rose and Casey, the barrister in charge of the process, will select another panel of 3 for another independent commission. So he has about 15 to 20 different experts open to him, to his selection in that process, all in theory experts in different areas, sports law and things like that. The idea being you pick the best 3 to overhear something like this. I imagine the best 3 were the panel that heard the commission, so we're on to the next 3 now. Will be a separate one, and they will set the time frame for it. So really at this point we don't really know anything more about the process other than the intention will be to have it concluded before the end of the season, because obviously there'll need to be certainty over the deduction and whether there's going to be any changes to that before the end of the campaign. Yeah,
I mean, Gav, being a big issue, of course, with the first one, it was all about timing, wasn't it? How long it took, and then when it did come out, that's the difference here, isn't it? We don't have the specific details, but will be completed before the end of the season, so Everton know one way or the other.
Yeah, and other clubs know that's just as important, isn't it? Really, it's a bit unsatisfactory, this, isn't it? You know, I've been thinking about this a lot. Yeah. In fact, I've thought a little else for the last couple of weeks, like most Everton supporters, and it should have been done before the start of the season, this, shouldn't it? You know, if we'd have got a 10-point penalty, I was just thinking about the psychology of this, it's not helpful getting something in mid-season, then with a review. If it'd been done at the start of the season, I mean, you're minus 10 points, you know what you've got to work with then. It may have changed our approach to the start of the season. And if it starts at minus 10, and at this stage of the season we'd only be 5 points off safety, you'd be going, yeah, we're in the right direction here, you know, we're behind you, you know, that type of stuff to the clubs above us. But it's the opposite effect, isn't it? And I think that the time and the whole, again I said before about the Premier League being amateurs on some issues, at the time of this is not, regardless of what you thought of the judgment and the penalty, you know, is not helpful. And I'm not sure whether that goes into the appeal or not, but it's not. And the torch is going to be extended even further now, isn't it, really, to some date in the future, and it doesn't help anybody in the Premier League whatsoever. And that's the concern I've got here. As I said on Monday, we could have 3 different points totals at the same time here, couldn't we?
Yeah, I think one of the, we're speaking on Friday afternoon, so my Royal Blue column goes out on Saturday morning, and what I'm writing at is another issue that kind of probably hasn't been discussed as much about in this, but obviously what it does for the January transfer window. Really, if this process is to have any real integrity, the appeal should be heard and dealt with before the end of this year. Now, it may well be that ends up being the case. We don't know, because no one's telling us what what the Premier League are basically saying is that the new commission, once it's chosen, will set the time frame for it. But you could go into January transfer window of uncertainty over this. Now, that could redefine clubs' approach to to what they're going to do and how much they're going to spend. Now, if you look at the table before the points deduction, well, the bottom 3 were kind of becoming cut adrift. Bournemouth were there as well, still within that orbit, but recent results have just helped them push clear. If you're someone like Luton spent less than £20 million in the summer. Now, it seemed very clear that their plan was they come up by surprise, we'll take the riches of the world's most lucrative domestic football league, we'll go back down, and we'll hopefully use that to consolidate and become a much stronger club, so that maybe in a couple of years' time we get back in the Premier League and actually make a fist of staying up. Now, if you're a Luton Town now, so you're 5 points clear of Everton. Everton have got a very difficult December. I haven't looked at Luton's fixtures, but I think Everton's probably the hardest of any club in some such as the nature of them. You look at Spurs, you look at Newcastle, Chelsea, City. Now, if they come out, if they get to December the 31st and they've got a 6-point head start on Everton, you can understand that they might go, well, you know what, I've got a 6-point head start here. Maybe some of that 30, 40 million pound, however much we're looking to bank, well, actually, we might never have a better chance to stay in the Premier League. And then they might start spending it.
Yeah.
And then what happens if they do that? Maybe they do that. Maybe they spend £40 million and in the middle of April, Everton get 2 points back. And Luton finish 1 point above Everton. The 2 points take Everton above them. Luton go down. But they spent the £40 million, which will have a huge knock-on impact on their own financial, their own compliance with the rules and wages and things like that. It's just so problematic for so many reasons. Even with Everton. If Everton, I think that the approach to the January window, and I think if we've probably all been able to read between the lines here, especially with the uncertainty of the takeover, I think January was always going to be a tight month. Probably one that's opportunistic at best, I think, from an Everton perspective. Now, if they had any money, if they had a spare 4 or 5 or 10 million pounds, on the previous trajectory, you could say, they go into January, you bank that. Why spend it? They look like they were on course for a mid-table season. Keep the money, maybe use it in the summer, but help with the compliance, everything like that. Well, now you're looking at it and you think if they get to the end of December, and they go, well, we're 6 points adrift here. We could probably just do with maybe finding an extra player or two. Well, you probably go spend it now because you need to stay in the Premier League. Otherwise, all the other problems just that we've discussed for 2 consecutive seasons of the threat of relegation, what it does to the club and everyone around it, become a real issue again. And it's problematic on 2 fronts. One, there's the uncertainty over who spends what because they don't know what their ambitions are and what's realistic for them. And the corollary to that is that this is supposed to be a process that encourages fiscal responsibility, but it may end up encouraging clubs to gamble in January. Yeah. Everton to gamble because they think we need to spend to stay up, and perhaps some of those other relegation-threatened clubs to gamble because they think we'll never have a better chance to stay up. And where does that leave everyone? Like I say, if everything's resolved by January the 1st, this doesn't necessarily happen, but I mean, these processes tend to take time. So I mean, I'd be very surprised if this is going to be a 4-week turnaround for everyone. So I mean, it's a really fascinating thing. But again, going back to what Gav's point was, we all understand Everton have committed wrongdoing. Even the club admit they're guilty. We've all questioned the way in which the club has been run over a sustained period of time. No one's arguing that the club is innocent here, but the handling of the process by the Premier League just seems a little bit shambolic. Woeful.
The other thing I'd say is that what they're gambling on there, though, it's not gambling on staying up or not, it's gambling on the appeal decision, isn't it? Yeah. That's the thing. Well, you're doing both, aren't you? You're gambling on the appeal decision going in your favour in some respects, and it's just nonsense. I mean, we're talking about a period that ended in June 2022. So that's 18 months ago. So it's taken 18 months from the end of the financial year, the last financial year in the period, to now, to have a serious discussion here, and it's going to go beyond the 18 months. Could get the way it's going, it could get on to closer to 2 years, couldn't it? And that's you can't expect clubs to operate in that environment. And I know this doesn't, this, as we well know, this type of thing doesn't happen very often. But it has to be better than that, doesn't it? Really, and I know they changed the rules, but it's still wrong. Yeah,
you mentioned they changed the rules. In fairness, they have tried to introduce a new system. So this year, it'll be the clubs have to submit their accounts by December the 31st, and then we'll then have the appeal if it's straightforward. Any case against them judged within the season, won't it? So then all of a sudden it goes from an 18-month to probably a 6 to 7, 8-month period, doesn't it? But still, it's not really very useful.
I mean, I've worked in organisations massively bigger than Everton or even Man United and stuff like that, and they have to get their accounts done 3 months after so really? in Premier League they'd have the accounts done by the end of September, and that seems to be the date we should be going for. And we might talk about the next stage of our PSR conversations, but it should be done far quicker, and it goes back to this amateur thing in the Premier League, and it does, this thing about making up as they go along, and there is, with all these changes in timetables and movable parts, that's what it strikes you as, doesn't it, from a governance perspective. And as much as we well know, we there's a punishment for us that's probably deserved, is all this subsequent stuff is not helping anybody I think we all agree on that as well, and that's firmly in the Premier League's balls in their court on this one.
Yeah, and of course it's been discussed already what Andy Burnham said in his grievances about the process, but on the back of that, we've had the aftermath of that, Joe, and then on articles this week, so, we was discussing it before we went on air there. This isn't over for Everton, along with all the other Premier League clubs, remain under scrutiny to make sure that the house is in order this year as well, because this precedent has been set now for everyone, not just Everton, in terms of making sure that these losses aren't out of control again.
Well, I mean, this season is going to be. It's already become chaotic. Now, under the new process we just discussed, the plan is for the 2023 financial year, any profit and sustainability concerns related to any Premier League club being dealt with, and the punishment being handed out for this season as well. So we could end up in a slightly strange situation where come the spring, other clubs who might be open to allegations about breaches in the most recent set of accounts could end up start getting points deductions or all sorts. It's going to be like a game of snakes and ladders this season. There are other teams that have got serious concerns about whether or not they're in compliance. It was very clear in the summer. I think the officials at Wolves actually mentioned it as a reason for not spending money, and they think they're going to be okay. But obviously Everton thought they were going to be okay when they submitted their accounts, and that's really interesting. And obviously what it also leads is the potential that Everton are going to be fighting on multiple fronts come January, because if the appeal process goes into the new year, they'll be fighting that. Well, their new set of accounts will come under scrutiny. As I've written today, they'll find out whether or not the Premier League have got any concerns over that by January the 14th, 15th, first 2 weeks of the new year. Premier League expressed a dim view towards Everton's financial actions over the 2023 period in the commission that's just heard over that handed out the 10-point penalty. Now, that commission deemed it irrelevant to their discussions because it fell outside the period that was under their microscope. But that probably, I think we all look at this and we look at the transfer activity, and it feels like Everton have followed a clear trajectory of, tightening their belts, getting big wages off the books, and trying not to spend money. And there's also been a lot of high-profile sales, which you would think would hopefully make Everton okay. But the Premier League have indicated that they weren't happy, so we'll be interested to see where they take that. So, that case, if there was to be one, will also be heard this year. So, the Times ran yesterday, I think, with an article saying Everton could be hit with a second points deduction this season, in theory. Now, they're using Everton as the hook into a wider thing, because the same punishment could be open to all clubs, but that does include Everton, and that does include the possibility of having to have this conversation again in 4 months' time, which, again, how's that? I mean, this season it's just going to be bonkers, and what's that going to look like to the outside world when all of this process is supposed to be about protecting the sporting integrity of the Premier League and its image as a brand?
Yeah, I mean, Gavin, like I said, we were talking about it before we went on air. It just seems to be an unsatisfactory situation all right. And so we're not just talking about Everton. We talk about the phrase a relegation 6-pointer. You could have a relegation 12-pointer, 20. Just pluck a number out the air.
Yeah, absolutely. And the points relating to your penalty, not the penalty off the pitch rather than losing the game on it. I mean, this and going back to what I was saying before. Yeah, it's good that they brought it forward. But the downside to that is we could be effectively punished twice in the same season, which that's a ridiculous situation. That can't be allowed to happen. And as I said to you, I think I said, like we were talking about this a couple of pods ago, is this last year. So the new period includes 22-23. Was based on some of our behaviour was based on the fact that the Premier League remained silent over some of the stuff that we flagged up to them. What we're saying, that we flagged up some of the issues in March 2022, that they took 9 months to get back to us. So so how are we supposed to behave in that period if the Premier League have done nothing? Would you assume we're okay? Probably, if the Premier League have just not given a decision, and then they take 9 months to get back to us, and I think that's wrong. And it's problem is there's a couple of things going on here, and I spoke about one before we came on. Is I keep on going back to this August 21 agreement with the Premier League, and where we said, and it's been lost this week, in the last couple of weeks, is you know, we talk about the Premier League corrupt and, you know, having to go with Everton. The Premier League let Everton off in 2021. They waved something through relating to the stadium that they didn't need to, just to make sure that we didn't breach. And that's been lost in all the, you know, they could have punished us and didn't. But the other side of the coin for that, for the agreement, was that we had to make sure that we lived within PSR in 22 and 23. And we breached in 22, which I don't think the Premier League were too happy about, which is driven some of their behaviour here. And we may breach in 23. I haven't signed an agreement 2 years ago that we wouldn't. And I think where they're being concerned, and we were talking about this before we came on, is our transfer behaviour in the summer of 22, where we bought, I know we sold a few players, but we spent, I don't know, 70, 80 million pounds on Onana, Garner, Dwight McNeil and stuff like that. Whilst doing a slide pack for the Premier League to say, can we, off our profits and sustainability calculation, can we deduct 80 million or 90 million off that, whilst having just spent 80 or 90 million pounds worth on players? I know it doesn't, the two things don't necessarily marry up, but I'm not sure what message the Premier League took that as. They could have taken a dim view of that. And I'm sure some of their behaviour towards us has come from that. And eventually they said, as I say, December 22, we're not giving you any more allowances. And so some of our behaviour in 22-23, I think, probably has riled the Premier League because of this August 21 agreement. That said, I think from, you know, don't want to, we haven't talked about football yet. We've got a game, so I think the good news for us is, because it's a low run 3 year period, we lose 2018-19, maybe we lost about 110 million quid. So we're not going to lose anywhere near like that in our financial. So as long as we don't do anything like that, I think we'll be okay. We might be skating close to the wind and stuff, but I think we should be okay based on what we know, because we sold Gordon, didn't we?
What we know about that period, obviously, the total fees that that Everton were committed to spending, that sum was £90 million. In terms of the upfront payments, it would have been much smaller than that.
Absolutely.
And then, as opposed to, obviously, they sold Gordon for about 45 million, the way in which it works, you're allowed to include the whole of the 45 million, even though you're going to get that in instalments, but you only have to account for the outgoings, the instalments you pay that time. There's also, and I don't quite know when the deal was officially formalised, but it may well be that within the last set of accounts, there's also the Moyes Keane conclusion of that deal to Juventus. And then what we do know is, obviously, there were a lot of big wages left the books in that summer 2022. Fabian Delph and Cenk Tosun and Alan a bit later, and Solomon Rondon even later. So there is. There's
loads of big. It's. I think I just, you know, when you throw that onto the mix and what we know, because we only lost 40 million the year before, I think we'll be okay. I don't anticipate it, you know, unless there's some stuff in the weeds that we don't know about. I think we should be okay. I just think that message that we give to the Premier League in the summer 22, is at that point they didn't know that we were going to sell Anthony Gordon. They did at that stage. And I think I'm hoping that would be okay based on, you know, some of the factors that you've brought in. But it's just news, isn't it? It's just more, if we're okay, it's just still more publicity, isn't it, for people to jump on the bandwagon, isn't it, really? Even though during the last couple of years, as well known, we've had tried to manage things down in terms of our spend, which is one of our mitigating factors we put in, wasn't it? But I think hopefully we'll be okay. But and then once we get rid of the COVID years, then I think, you know, we'll be in a far better position. And I've said before, we lose 3 players during the summer who really aren't offering a lot at the moment. But yeah, it's. You know, I don't think Everton fans have spoken about football for the last couple of weeks, have we? In terms of getting, apart from a brief conversation about the Man United game and you know, the early part of this week.
Yeah, well, I think that's a timely spot to move on there. I mean, there's plenty of expert insight there. I mean, we certainly can't be accused of those sort of pundits who say, "Well, I haven't read the report," but. Joe, you and I off to the City Ground tomorrow evening, 5:30 kickoff. First of a couple of 5:30 kickoffs we've got coming up. I suppose the big thing in terms of the preparation for this game is the doubts over Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and the manager Sean Dyche has already said that he doesn't think Amadou Onana will make it back for this one either.
Yeah, it's not great, really. Not great going into what I think is now the biggest game of Everton's season. because I think when you look at where the club is right now, obviously the deflation of the 10 points added to by the disappointment of the result and elements of the performance against Manchester United. We've been saying for months about how tough December is, and the work that Everton and Sean Dyche and the players had done leading up to the last international break, they created that buffer. It hadn't been a perfect start to the season, but as an 8-point cushion to the relegation zone, and I think the idea was, or where I took hope from that, was that created the cushion that would mean that Everton would survive December. However bad December got, they would probably come out of it still being competitive and probably still outside the relegation zone. And that freedom would have meant that they would have gone into a difficult run of fixtures with it's almost with a sense of optimism. You can see them as an opportunity. You can play with under a bit less pressure, and under that, hopefully, to get better results as a consequence. What there is a real danger of now, I think, is there's a danger of, for a club that was building such positive momentum, if Everton don't get a positive result against Nottingham Forest, there's a danger of it becoming, of the negative momentum starting to kind of grow and grow and grow. You have the 10 points or something in the relegation zone. Go to Man United, okay, you have the false start, so you don't hit back immediately. You go to Forest, a club that is, probably keep competing around the same level of Everton at the moment. If you don't go there and win, Burnley play Sheffield United, so Burnley may well end up winning, creating a bit of a gap to Everton. Luton against Brentford, don't know how that would turn up, but they'll still be well above Everton at the end, the conclusion of these set of fixtures, whatever happens. And all of a sudden, if you have another false start, and then you go into Chelsea and Newcastle, they're difficult games. They're winnable games. Chelsea are vulnerable. Goodison Park's amazing. Newcastle got a hell of a lot of injuries. Goodison Park's amazing. But again, they're very, very difficult fixtures, and all of a sudden the disappointment could just increase and increase and increase, and I think that's the danger of December for me. And it just feels slightly cruel. All the work that was done positively has now been taken away, and an opportunity to go into this month with a lot of hope and a degree of freedom and optimism, including with the Carabao Cup, all of a sudden starts to look like it could be a really difficult couple of weeks. And so the necessity of getting a good, that all changes if Everton go to City Ground and win, and all of a sudden they're on the fringe of they're one win from safety again potentially, and everything else, and it takes momentum going into the next week of home fixtures. But it could be very difficult, and obviously I think Everton really, really missed Amadou Onana against Manchester United, and I think we all know the importance of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and Beto, I think, gives us far more hope and reason for belief than the previous 2 seasons that Everton have a system in which they can cope with the loss of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We spoke about this over the summer and beginning of the season, that it was less about replacing the goals of Dominic Calvert-Lewin and more having somebody that could do a similar job up front, so it maintains integrity, that tactical setup. And I think Beto does that. We saw it so effectively last time he started a game, which was at Brentford, when he was crucial in creating the platform for the 3-1 win. So by no means is all hope lost if Dominic Calvert-Lewin's injured, but again, it just adds to that growing sense of frustration. And say Calvert-Lewin can't play, say Onana misses as we expect him to do, say they don't get a good result, Decore, Branthwaite, 2 crucial players, both one booking away from a suspension, which then undermines everything going into Newcastle, and that's where it gets problematic. So I don't think you can I don't think you can overstate the importance of this game into Everton's new look season. Forest lost at home the other day. Everton, we know, have been very, very good away from home. There's reason to approach this game with a degree of hope and confidence. They could really do with responding.
Joe finished on a high there.
Back in now,
Positive podcast so far. We could flip this over. Gav. I mean, it's easy to sort of think everything's transpiring against them. At the end of the day, the teams at the top of the Premier League, and Manchester United are one of those. I know they've been up and down this season, but there is a massive gap. Got some great quality players, and Everton were unfortunate in that all the momentum of the crowd and the players' determination was kind of sucked out by a wonder goal 3 minutes into the contest, and it's easy to go, 3-0. I mean, is this a good time to play Forest? Do you think that this, after the false start against United, could this be when Everton we see the sort of the reaction to everything that's gone against?
It's a good time to play away from home against the type of team that Dyche has got a great record since he's come. I think, you know, that sort of mid to low ranking team in the Premier League away from home, I don't know what our record is under Dyche, but I don't think we probably lost many. No. I think we probably got a hell of a lot of, I think we've got a hell of a lot of points against those teams. So it's a proto Everton away victory type situation, isn't it, really? So and they're under a bit of pressure themselves. I think that Forest, aren't they? Interesting to see that of the 6 goals last season were scored in the game, there's only Decore who's left, isn't it? Brandon Johnson scored all 3 and he's gone, and Damara Gray scored 2 and he's gone, hasn't he? So yeah, it's a bit of a change, but yeah, I think it's an ideal fixture for us in the great scheme of things. I don't think we lost the way. Lost outside Liverpool. Yeah,
that was a hell of a game. Wasn't it?
I don't think we've lost outside of Liverpool this season, have we? Or Villa, apart from Villa. I think we've got really good, but we don't lose many on the road. That's about that. It's first 15 league games and Everton manager's career away from home. There's only Gordon Lee's team scored more goals than Dyche's.
He's trotting them all out now.
Yeah, it's all positive, yeah. I was going to say to Buckarigi plays for Forest, but I'll leave that, yeah. And no, I think it's an ideal situation for us, to be honest with you. It's an ideal game, the type of opponent that we've got the game to win. And I'm just wondering about DCL. If it was 50-50, would you play him tomorrow and rather than play him against Newcastle and Chelsea?
I think if Beto's fit and we understand it to be, I think you play him tomorrow. I think it's a game that Beto could still be very effective in. I think it's a game again where Everton's chance of success are more dependent on having them being able to play Dyche's system than having Dominic Calvert-Lewin at the top of that system to score the chances. You know, I think that if you've got Beto up there, they can play the same style and hopefully create the chances that like Decore, McNeil, Harrison and that can put away. Hopefully Beto as well. But I think if it's 50-50, I think we know how valuable Dominic Calvert-Lewin is. I'd suggest that it's unlikely that he's going to start. Given, I have no insider knowledge, but just given the fact there was even a doubt going into Thursday, his importance and how they've handled him so far, I just don't really know why you'd risk it, particularly with a midweek game. And I think that you've got Chelsea, you've got Newcastle. You know, Newcastle have got a lot of injuries, but you don't get a lot of change out of that defence. You know, I'd be considering maybe holding for Chelsea, which have a little bit more fragility at the back. And then obviously the Burnley game is the three games that will tell us the most about this Everton side this month is this one, Burnley away and Wolves away. They're the ones that will tell us, I think, about, obviously if Everton go and get 7 points and then 3, they're probably out the relegation zone come the end of this month. And the good away form has continued, the good form against beatable sides has continued, and anything you take from the big clubs is, or the clubs that are competing for European spaces, the better. Hopefully they can get off to a good start.
Just before we get to predictions, I want to ask you both, is it time for Seamus Coleman, perhaps? Would you be tempted?
Why not Nathan Patterson? That's the thing, isn't it, really? We had a long conversation on the pods, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, about Nathan Patterson, whose Goodison career is, it's in the enigmatic category, isn't it? I mean, Dyche was talking him up yesterday, saying he's a good player and stuff, and saying all nice things about him, and the obvious thing is, well, why is he not playing then? When obviously, you know, Young's been struggling. I don't want to cover all ground. The treatment of Patterson and where he stands in the pecking order and what people actually think about him is one of the great mysteries of Goodison for me at the moment. If he's not good enough now, then you know why, you know, we spent a lot of money on him. Do we look to sell? If he is good enough, why he's not in the team?
Probably, sorry to joke, it's probably not even a case of if he's not good enough now, because I think one of the really frustrating things is you can understand the argument around Ashley Young starting at right back because of his experience, everything he brings to the team in that respect. That only works if he's not making mistakes. He's making quite a lot of mistakes. So what would you rather have right now? Would you rather have, you know, the 38-year-old on a 1-year contract making mistakes at right back, or would you rather have the lad in his early 20s who's got room to grow? Even if he was making the same mistakes that Young was making, you'd be frustrated, but there'd still be more of a benefit because of the development in his game than there would be in having Young.
And absolutely, and as lots of people have said, there's Jack Harrison is struggling at the moment, I think, because Young can't You know, he's either got to come back and support Young, or Young, when Jack Harrison's got the ball, he's got 3 or 4 men on him because there's no overlapping fullback, is there? Like, and I think that's what Patterson would bring as well, wouldn't he? So I suppose it's a question, a more simplified question: is he better than Ashley Young at the moment, rather than do we think he's the long-term solution for Everton? And I would say you'd have to play Patterson on that basis, or at least give him a run of games, because you know Young. Said Joe, but crucial games. One thing we learned about Young this season, in crucial games, he's let us down a few times, hasn't he? On the road as well. And I think it'd be interesting to see how Dyche handles that tomorrow, because I think Harrison looks a better player. I think when be a better player if Patterson plays, and Coleman, I don't know. You don't know his fitness, do you?
No.
If Coleman gets in, if you Patterson, you'd be seriously wound up, wouldn't you?
I wonder if I was at the under-21s game on Tuesday night.
Monaco,
Monaco, the 4-2 win. Seamus Coleman had been named he'd started the last 3 under-21 games, then didn't start at the weekend because it coincided with the Manchester United game. Obviously, he was on the bench for that. The fact that he wasn't in that squad suggests to me that he's probably entered that realm where he's gone beyond. He's match fit, and now he's in that kind of almost like, I don't know, fitness purgatory. Whereas how do you get from fit to Dyche fit? But I think he must be on the cusp, and I wonder if. I think it's clear Sean Dyche probably will hold on to his views and doesn't like other people to try and make decisions for him. I wonder if there's an element now with Nathan Patterson, where he's gone for so long refusing to play him, despite having had plenty of opportunities to take Young out the side, given what's happened, that actually Seamus Coleman gives him the opportunity to make that change at right back, but save face, because it doesn't look like a climb down of replacing Ashley Young with Nathan Patterson, which feels like something he doesn't want to do. So I wonder if over the course of the next week we might see Coleman come in at right back, and that be the attempt to solve it. Obviously, how Coleman, we know he's a model professional, how he adapts to the situation. It's not going to be easy for him to come into these games.
I know he gives you a bit of leadership on the pitch, doesn't he, Coleman, which we could do with, especially if Anana's not playing.
Yeah.
I think he does give you that little bit of extra vibrancy, doesn't he, and leadership, as I say. So it'd be interesting to see, but it's a big game. It's a lot more bigger than what we thought it was going to be 3 weeks ago, isn't it, really? You look at the fixture, just a point of Forest to be all right. You're thinking, I'm not so sure about that. Just be interesting to see.
Yeah. Patterson's still too inexperienced, but maybe 35-year-old youngster Coleman could come in for 38-year-old.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Gordon Lee would have done that, by the way, speaking of Gordon. Yeah, he would have done that. Yeah.
Okay, predictions time. I'll start us off now. I'll be positive. I mean, there's quite rightly, there's been a lot of ground addressed here, and it's not all been too positive. I'm going to start us off 2-1 Everton. What do you reckon, Joe?
I'm going to agree with you. I think Gav was spot on earlier when he said this is kind of the blueprint for a Dyche Everton away win. I hope that you're right, Gav.
Yeah.
I hope that you're right. And I think having watched over the last fortnight as December's gone from a busy month, but one where you thought the pressure of relegation's off and maybe you could approach it with, we knew the takeover stuff was coming. And we knew some of the appeal stuff was coming as well. But I was hoping for a December we could just talk about the football and what was on the pitch. Yeah. That's gone. Hopefully the best antidote to that is winning games so that everyone can still be positive, and I'm desperate for that, because I'm just staring at that Wolves game at the end of the month, and I'm just remembering Wolves at home on Boxing Day last year, and it's got the potential to be a mirror image, hasn't it, of just a difficult game, which tells you that
don't forget Wolves away as well last week.
That's it.
Wolves at home as well.
Wolves at any point.
It would be nice to go into that game with that not being a must-win, I think. So, and I think for that to happen, I think now would be a very, very good time to start the fight back.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it could Burnley play Sheffield United don't do tomorrow, so we could be there, I say, right at the bottom tomorrow.
Well, somebody's going to get points
or at the same time, we could end tomorrow, especially Luton is also only, a couple of points from the outside the relegation zone. So yeah, it just feels like a fixture that we do well in, and it's one of them where you could actually, you know, Young's played in some good performance away from home, so I'll keep him. It just seems like a 1-0 or a 2-1. Probably should have won there last year, shouldn't we?
Yeah, really? Should have. I mean, that's another debate about substitutions, isn't it?
Yeah, should have won there. That was a frustrating one. That I think 2-1 seems like a natural result, doesn't it? Really, and we don't 3 wins on the spin away from home. Would be if we win tomorrow, it'd be 5 wins out of 6. Yeah. In all competitions.
Considering how poor the last 2 years have been.
Yeah, it's and I think we'd match the league away wins this season over what we've done over the previous 2 seasons combined.
If they win tomorrow, they got 2 each. 2 away wins each the past 2 seasons. They've got 3 for this season so far. And have 4, which matches, you know, not even by Christmas is good. Just need to up the away home form a little bit. But yeah, it's a game we've got to approach with some confidence, haven't we? Just thinking Hannah being missing at the moment is hurting us, isn't he? And because James Garner's a better player than Hannah in the team. But yeah, 2-1 Everton, it seems like a natural result, I think.
Yeah. Well, after all of that, a hat trick, a trio of 2-1 predictions there. So let's hope that it's a more positive podcast when we rejoin you on Monday. And having your host Chris Beesley, joined by Joe Thomas and Gavin Buckland.